You're just mad because things didn't turn out the way you wanted it. And that's always your biggest flaw. It's always about what you want.
Remember when I said that I have a tendency to learn things the hard way? I wasn't fucking kidding.
But Ephraim said it best. I've never been alone. I could use the help I need. Ephraim, I love you.
He doesn't understand what is coming to him. He doesn't realize on what to prepare for. His reliable nature towards others are his own weakness. He cannot handle his own problems. Oh, Goldie boy, you pitiful stallion. You have much to learn about yourself that no one else can help you with. You have much to open yourself up to what you truly hide that I only know of. Your embodiment of your true colors. We shall see soon.
So after several years, the show has gone from the development of Twilight being a student and then being an alicorn to having a castle of her own and her defining new purposes in life and all sorts of many trials and errors. It's come a long way to the point where the main protagonist is now potentially passing the torch to a heavily polarizing character. And that's exactly what Celestial Advice does. I say potential though instead of direct because there are some episodes that center a conflict around Twilight, and technically this episode does that too. But I'm getting too ahead of myself. Before talking about the episode itself, however, I should first point this out. This is the first time a premiere did something that no other premiere did. Unlike others that had two-parters, this one is an individual episode itself. Now, there are some people out there who are not very fond of having this not being a two-parter, but if you ask me, I'm completely open to this. It's breaking the norm and trying something new or different, which is something I find comparatively welcoming. It's a nice change in pace. Having two-parters all the time have become a bit stale and routine, and by this point we've seen several kinds of two-parters involving what happens with the main six that were big and filled with some action scenes. Or so whereabouts. It eventually grew to the point where it seems DHX was getting burned out by this habit, and as far as premieres go, it went from being in depth with character development and motives to a thematically disturbing concept to holding off a storm that was caused by a child. Yeah, I'm going to be blunt. I haven't been as fond of the Crystalline because of that. It wasn't bad, but it's one of my least favorite openers. Now, do I expect or want premieres to have a single episode instead of a two-parter all the time? I wouldn't think so. But if the series completely discards having future two-parters, I guess we'll have to live with it. Although that's not very likely according to what happened in To Where I'm Back Again. Getting back to the episode though, the majority of what happens involves Twilight's imagination being shared with Celestia and Spike, representing the pros and cons on what to do with Starlight when sending her elsewhere now that Starlight has learned so much. No denying though, her thoughts were very hyperbolic, and obviously that's understandable. The changelings have much to learn about the values of friendship and not just the consumption of love. The dragons are too reckless, and with her interaction with Sunburst, summoning a wormhole through alchemy is more than likely to happen. Some would argue that Twilight's overreacting, but when you think about it, you never know what could happen with someone you spent your time teaching. So with all this in mind, I was pretty invested with the pressure on what commitment Twilight has to make for Starlight. Feeling forcibly to pass the torch though is beyond awkward. However, my biggest amount of credibility that I have to give for it in this ongoing theme was Celestia's moment.
I can't believe you're laughing at me.
Oh, Twilight, I'm not. I'm laughing because I had the exact same fears you're having.
What?
Let me tell you a story.
Holy crap! Celestia shares her insight about her protege. You have no idea how excited I was to see some development for her. It's been very scarce revolving around Celestia's character and what she does. Throughout the majority of the series, I've been wanting to see some development by the two sisters, and obviously we've seen plenty of development from Luna. But most of the time we've seen her acting as a motherly figure, a spewing of exposition, being the weakest alicorn in Equestria, and filling out papers as if that's all she does. Yeah, DHX, I'm not falling for that. Given what she has done in the past, I know you weren't trying, you sleazy sons of... Additionally, the backstory regarding on what to do for Twilight definitely covers the ground based on what she's been setting up all the way back to the pilot episode. Now, Celestia does have more of this in a much, much later episode, which is comparatively fantastic, but that'll be open for another time. My biggest gripe with this episode, however, is from Discord. Rooting down to how this episode started, Twilight celebrates Starlight's victory with the rest of her group after the defeat of Chrysalis. However, Discord talks to Twilight into thinking that based on how much she's developed, a plan would be made similar to the likes of Twilight's journey from the pilot episode. Even more so, Discord convinces Starlight that Twilight has something big planned for her, and thus making Twilight feel so pressured it could trigger up to the levels of Lesson 0. What's worse is that despite all the efforts Celestia helps with, Discord still gets on Twilight's case for procrastinating.
You weren't coming up with a plan just now, were you? Oh dear, this could be pretty embarrassing for you.
Okay, I know that Discord's antics were the driving force of this episode's conflict, but at the same time, given Twilight's track record, he's not really that needed. Just seeing him being a complete troll for Twilight for the sake of him being a troll did a disservice to his character. Yeah, sure, that's the nature of his personality, but it's also disregarding his overall development in the entirety of the series. There also has to be a balance to it. Either his antics provide something useful, or there's a source of karma that he gets. Especially in To Where and Back Again, where his ego gets him the name Klutzy Draconicus, or in Dungeons and Discords, where his cynical attitude makes his time with Spike and Big Mac more difficult. So at the very least, what kind of karma does he get in this episode for his jerk-ass behavior?
Darn it, I was hoping you'd send her to my realm. We could have been roomies. Way to not pick up what I was putting down.
Okay, fair enough. Given how petty his reason is for starting this big dilemma, that's what happens when you screw around with someone else's personal business. It doesn't excuse his behavior, though. I can't let that slide. So, I've covered up most of the episode's ground, and pretty much the only thing left for me to talk about are the little moments I laughed at. And there were plenty in this episode. For starters, I love Pinkie Pie's clever methods of preparing parties, including the vacuum at the end of the episode that completely clears the room. And as much as I didn't like how Discord was acting, as I mentioned, I did chuckle at his grand appearance where he roots for himself. But the funniest moment for me was during the Dragon World vision where Garble drags Starlight into the lava pit.
You wanna hang with us?
What are we diving into?
Lava!
What?
And I'm pretty sure that a certain blue unicorn who has a passion for theatrics would be celebrating this moment. In the end, Starlight chooses to stay, which to many comes off as a missed opportunity or a cock tease. Part of the reason being that the debate on what to do with Starlight is the majority of the episode, and the other being that after all the effort Twilight invested was pointless and an overreaction from her line of thinking. Personally, that's the point. Twilight wasn't sure on what to do with Starlight, and most of the time she didn't need to get too worried no thanks to Discord to begin with. On the other hand, it's understandable about what to do with your subject when you're the teacher. And I think that's definitely something for those who are in the position on whether you're teaching, training, or mentoring someone, or even raising a child. And considering what Twilight was thinking about, it's definitely something more for her to prepare for, thus making Season 7 all the more exciting to anticipate to. You know what? Now that you mention it, I should go over a reminder of what's to come on my channel. Most of you would normally expect me to usually take on reviewing every episode and struggling to catch up like I did in the past. However, I was the most behind in Season 5, taking my time to make the best reviews possible. And then Hasbro decided to air Season 6 much sooner, thus putting a detriment on my work. So while this has been a thing for me in the past couple of years, I took a step back from knowing this and thinking if whether or not I'm enjoying it. I'm going to be perfectly honest and say that there were some episodes that I had little to talk about and struggled to extend my reviews and making them come off as legit. And there were ones that I had a lot to say, but couldn't word them correctly due to the pressures of trying to stay up to date. By this point, it's become such a chore, and what's worse is that it's been holding me back from doing other things on my channel that I also wanted to do, such as countdowns and other categories to tackle on. So, from this point on, I'm instead going to be selective on what episodes I'll review this time and focus on other categories that seems more interesting and exciting for me to take on. This is also including previous seasons. trying to catch up to the latest episode isn't really as worth it as I thought it would be. Now, there are some who are able to handle it, such as Watchful Pony and Misanthrope Pony, and enjoy it, and that's fine with them. But for me, it's too exhausting. I've been dedicating my channel to MLP for such a long time, but never having the chance to explore on other categories has been a disservice to myself. And finally deciding to take on this is a rather exciting opportunity for what this channel beholds. So until next time, I'm GoldenFox, and take care.